Chapter 1256, Sorry to disturb. Could you not follow me so closely? Sun Zhongyang looked at the other wealthy families angrily. Why don't you just ride the same horse as me? The other wealthy families put on a fake smile. The Sun family is rushing to the West capital. Who knows what you are up to? What, are you trying to go to the Lord of Heaven and take credit for someone else's achievements? What, are you better than the rest of the palace because you have a master in your family now? Sun Zhongyang suddenly realized that Duanmu Huangqi had never been fond of the wealthy families in the palace. He had always treated the wealthy families in the palace like ants. Now, to the other wealthy families, this was a chance to form ties with Duanmu Huangqi. After all, the Luniverse was going through a reform. If they had the support of a Lord of Heaven, they would be more stable. But Sun Zhongyang did not agree with this point of view. Cooperating with Duanmu Huangqi would be like asking a tiger for its skin. Duanmu Huangqi was very distrusting and had a very high opinion of himself. Even though the Sun family had a master, they were not willing to form ties with Duanmu Huangqi. If Lu Shu lost, and the ordinary wealthy families in the palace depended on Duanmu Huangqi, they would not even be able to obtain the bones that Duanmu Huangqi ate. But Lu Shu was different. Sun Zhongyang knew that although Lu Shu was also cautious and distrusting, he still had principles. Suddenly, a few people in the group were dumbfounded. The messenger mirror was vibrating. They fished out the messenger mirror and received new information. The person in the palace of the King of Gods seemed to be unhappy with the small amount of people the wealthy families were sending out. They ordered each family to send out 10,000 troops. The wealthy families in the palace wanted to only send out a small number of people. They often feigned compliance. But this time, the palace of the King of Gods did not allow them to slip away unpunished. This meant that there would be 140,000 troops chasing after Sun Zhongyang and the rest. Sun Zhongyang could not help but furrow his eyebrows. Was Lu Shu actually able to withstand the pressure of these troops and Duanmu Huangqi? Sun Zhongyang furrowed his eyebrows. Why had the Sword Hut not made a move? Had the Sword Hut given up on Lu Shu? Or did they think that Duanmu Huangqi and the wealthy families from the palace would not be able to do much to Lu Shu? The former was rational. After all, the Sword Hut had never gone against the palace of the King of Gods. Although the head of the Sword Hut had attacked the palace of the King of Gods before, the head of the Sword Hut was very unique. But if the latter was true, and the Sword Hut believed in Lu Shu, then how did the senior disciple of the Sword Hut view Lu Shu? Sun Zhongyang did not want to think about it. He felt that he would not be able to understand this with his current level of information. He simply continued to advance. Rationally, they should wait for their troops to join them, but Sun Zhongyang single-handedly led the slaves from the Sun family. The other families had no choice but to continue chasing him. Some people were upset. They did not want the Sun family to keep moving. Sun Zhongyang laughed coldly. If you are tired, you don't have to chase us. Everyone stopped complaining, but they started to scold him in their minds. If the Sun family had not traveled day and night, they could remain calm and composed. If Duanmu Huangqi had killed Lu Shu by then, they could continue being rich and idle people. Some wealthy families had wanted to buy time. It was a pity that their plans could not catch up. On the way, news that Lu Shu and the others destroyed cities one by one streamed in. Furthermore, there were civilians in these cities, but the Imperial Dragon soldiers did not kill civilians. Thus, compared to the destruction of the Lujian Pass, the process of how these cities had been destroyed was more complete. This information gave people the jitters. It was said that yesterday, when Lu Shu and the rest destroyed the city, there were only about 50 people from the Weiwu army. A city had been destroyed by just over 50 people. Furthermore, it did not seem to have taken them much effort. The strength of the Weiwu army was difficult for others to grasp. There had never been an army which was as ferocious as the Weiwu army, no. There had been an invincible army that had disappeared. The Imperial Dragon Soldiers. There were times when Sun Zhongyang thought about it. If the Imperial Dragon Soldiers had reappeared, this was probably them, right? He did not know that the Wei Wu army had changed their name to the Imperial Dragon Soldiers. He had never personally experienced the ferocity of the Imperial Dragon Soldiers. When the cities that had not been attacked in the West region saw Zhang Weiyu, it was like looking at their father. According to Sun Zhongyang's plan, they would encounter Lu Shu in about a day. In his mind, he was constantly thinking about how to resolve the relationship between the wealthy families and Lu Shu. He was also thinking about how to make the Sun family seem neither haughty nor humble. Sun Xuanwen was still keeping vigil beside the coffin of the former family head. He wanted to keep an eye on the activity in the palace of the King of Gods. Sun Zhongyang was very close to his grandfather and wanted to keep vigil as well. But a transformation was about to occur. He could not wait any longer. When night fell, the wealthy families stopped. They made a fire and cooked meals. After some rest, they continued to advance forward. At this moment, the other wealthy families were about to collapse. They did not know why Sun Zhongyang was rushing. They were a group of uncles who enjoyed their high positions and lived in comfort in the palace. Now, they were going to fall apart. Someone sat by the bonfire and looked at the Sun family. They laughed coldly. The Sun family is probably trying to break away from the rest of the wealthy families just because they have a master. The wealthy families in the palace have been able to continue standing because our ancestors understood that we are intimately interdependent. Has the Sun family ever seen the wealthy families fight to death? The person did not speak softly. They wanted Sun Zhongyang to hear this. Of course, he was not wrong. There had never been a master among the wealthy families in the palace. They had always faced problems of life and death together. Now, this relationship was breaking apart. Sun Zhongyang furrowed his eyebrows and did not speak, as he could not speak. He could not tell these people that the Sun family believed that a great political change was about to occur. A lord of heaven might die. This seemed deliberately exaggerated. Furthermore, people would immediately betray the Sun family. While the wealthy families were standing with daggers drawn, someone suddenly said, Sorry to disturb. I'm sorry to tell you that you have been surrounded. Sun Zhongyang and the rest were shocked. They looked around. Countless armored soldiers had appeared around the campsite. These armored soldiers softly muttered, "Are these people here to fight? They seem tragic. Are they refugees? I don't care. Since they appeared here, there must be something wrong." Among these armored soldiers, the flag with "Escape Poverty and Make a Fortune" written on it fluttered in the wind. Chapter 1257, Mice Army Scout. When the "Escape Poverty and Make a Fortune" flag appeared, Sun Zhongyang and the rest understood who they were surrounded by. After all, the flag was unique in the entire universe. No one dared to imitate them. No one was willing to imitate them either. It was too embarrassing. But even if they had not seen the flag, which other elite army would be able to surround the wealthy families from the palace? Only the peak elites, like the Wei Wu army. Sun Zhongyang felt that even the elites under Duanmu Huangqi would not have been able to do so. Furthermore, the patrons had all died. There were not as many peak experts under Duanmu Huangqi as one had imagined. A rough voice from among the Wei Wu army asked, "My great lord asks, where do you come from?" As he spoke, their formation grew tighter. They suppressed over 1,000 people from the wealthy families in the palace. These people did not even dare to move. The sound of the armor rubbing against one another sounded like a knife sharpening against a grindstone. The slaves from the wealthy families in the palace praised themselves for being elite fighters. When they heard stories about the Wei Wu army, they often thought that they were only few in numbers. If they were able to gather 5,000 people, they would definitely be stronger than the Wei Wu army. But when they actually faced the Wei Wu army, which they had looked down upon, they suddenly realized that they did not even have the courage to fight back. These beasts had trained their chemistry. They were different from the elites in the palace, who enjoyed their high positions and lived in comfort. The Wei Wu army had probably killed more people this year than they had in their entire lives. But they observed the Wei Wu army again. Under the circumstances that they had more people and strength than their enemies, they continued to be cautious against their enemies. Although their words were harsh, there were no gaps in their formation. The minute problems in their formation had been perfectly patched up after some casual discussion among these uncles. It was said that tigers captured and killed rabbits using all their strength. Although the Wei Wu army had fought many battles, they were not conceited. There was definitely something wrong with people who often won, but these flaws could not be seen in the Wei Wu army. Who would have known that within the Wei Wu army, no matter whether it was Li Liang or Zhang Weiyu, they were all seasoned veterans. How could they commit low-leveled mistakes? Once conceited thoughts formed among the army, they would immediately get rid of them. They would even inflict punishment. To Li Liang and Zhang Weiyu, it was better for them to punish these people than to lose lives due to pride. The elites from the palace observed the Wei Wu army. The faces of the soldiers were covered by the shadow of their helmets. They did not even give their enemies the opportunity to observe them. How could this tight formation be achieved by a new army? This was a true weapon made for war. Suddenly, Sun Zhongyang raised his hands. I am Sun Zhongyang. Great Lord, please come out. At this moment, Sun Zhongyang suddenly realized that he did not even have the courage to call Lu Shu by his name. Instead, he called Lu Shu, Great Lord. Sun Zhongyang understood that the young man, who had once happily traveled with him, was now on another level. He could only look up to the young man. There was a sound from among the people. The Imperial Dragon soldiers gave way. Lu Shu appeared from the crowd and came in front. He smiled. Needless to say, this is the first time seeing you so unkempt. I couldn't recognize you. Sun Zhongyang observed Lu Shu's cheery appearance. How could he have not recognized him? Evidently, Lu Shu had recognized him but did not want to. But this was not the time for a conflict. Sun Zhongyang gritted his teeth and said, Great Lord, I have something to discuss with you. Please let me speak first. No, Lu Shu waved his hand. It's not the time for you to speak. Let me ask you first. What are you wealthy families trying to do, going to the West region to create a commotion? The action of coming to the West region meant that they had joined in the situation. Since they had joined, then they should put aside their former friendships. To Lu Shu, there were not many things in this world that was worth protecting. He still had to bring the Wei Wu army back alive. Sun Zhongyang explained. The Palace of the King of Gods has issued orders for the wealthy families in the Palace of the King of Gods to help Duanmu Huangji chase you. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. Orders from the Palace of the King of Gods? From who? This question stumped the wealthy families. Sun Zhongyang thought about it. The new King of Gods? Have you ever seen the person who gives out orders? Lu Shu asked unkindly. No one has ever emerged from the Palace of the King of Gods since a very long time ago. In the past, the puppet masters were the ones who issued orders. But later on, they also disappeared, said Sun Zhongyang. They are deliberately making themselves mysterious. Lu Shu laughed coldly. The mastermind did not even dare to reveal himself. Was there a god or a ghost inside the Palace of the King of Gods? The wealthy families did not dare to speak, as Lu Shu had accused the Palace of the King of Gods of intentionally mystifying matters. They did not dare to accept this. But at this moment, everyone realized that this young man did not even care about the Palace of the King of Gods. Sun Zhongyang suddenly remembered what his father had said. The Palace of the King of Gods had been vacant for a long time. He was shocked. Did Lu Shu think the same way? What secret was the palace of the king of gods hiding? If that's the case. Lu Shu turned and looked straight at the elites. Are you here to surround me? Sun Zhongyang panicked. Not necessarily. My father advanced to the master realm a few days ago. After he gained the position of family head, the first thing I did was to rush over. This is to display the sincerity of the Sun family. As he spoke, the people from the Sun family distanced themselves from the other wealthy families. The flag was clearly facing off against the rest of the wealthy families. But at this moment, Sun Zhongyang still felt uncomfortable. Being surrounded by Lu Shu made others feel like he had acted based on his strong desire to survive under the threat of the Wei Wu army. There was no actual sincerity. It would have been much better if he did not have to accept this name card under such forced circumstances. But it was too late for regrets. Who would have thought that the Wei Wu army, who was hundreds of kilometers away, would suddenly appear here? Anyway, how did the Wei Wu army discover them? They did not find any suspicious people. Sun Zhongyang did not know that there were no suspicious people. However, the mice army had covered a radius of a few hundred kilometers. Little Fury's underlings hid in the mountains. They were in charge of keeping a lookout in secret. There were no holes they could not enter. Furthermore, there was a massive amount of mice. They were Lu Shu's strongest informers. There were no suspicious people, but there were numerous suspicious mice. With the mice army, no army could secretly approach the Imperial Dragon soldiers. When Little Fury looked at the doubtful gazes from Sun Zhongyang and the others, it displayed a scornful expression. Recently, its Imperial concubines had returned. It had also filled in the gaps in its commanding structure. The current mice army was very strong. Lu Yizhao was even more free. He was not afraid that Little Fury would steal his job. After all, the Great Lord did not care much about him. Chapter 1258, Massive Introduction Session. Lu Shu looked at the Sun family, which was surrounded. Then, he looked at the numerous wealthy families facing the Sun family. He curiously asked, from the look of things, you want to break off relations with the wealthy families in the palace. But what gives the Sun family the confidence to fight so many people? At that moment, a group of 12 people stood in front of the Sun family. To Lu Shu's shock, all 12 people were rank 1 experts. Sun Zhongyang calmly said, my father started to nurture his own underlings since 100 years ago. Each of these 12 underlings might not lose to those patrons. The Sun family will kill all the wealthy families here and leave our legacy. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. When he had heard of Sun Xuanwen, he did not take it to heart. Back then, someone said that Sun Xuanwen was the one who had the most potential to advance to the master realm in the palace. Lu Shu thought, was he that amazing? But those who were able to break free from the wealthy families in the palace had extraordinary characteristics. When orders were issued from the palace of the King of Gods, he was able to make a prompt decision and put the fate of the Sun family on Lu Shu's shoulders. This was interesting. Furthermore, he was a genius who had been waiting patiently for 100 years. He had nurtured 12 underlings while keeping in his desire to become family head. When he advanced to the master realm, he finally stood up. Needless to say, to Lu Shu, Sun Xuanwen had strength, patience, and ambition. Most importantly, he had good judgment. Lu Shu hesitated. Then, he said, why did your father dare to put the fate of the Sun family on my shoulders? My father said that all of nature is with you, explained Sun Zhongyang. Lu Shu nodded. What a praise, no. What else did he say? Sun Zhongyang looked blankly at Lu Shu. He did not know what to say. He realized that up till this point, this young man was still not decent. From Sun Zhongyang's distress, plus 666. But something strange happened suddenly. Someone among the wealthy families suddenly laughed coldly. No wonder the Sun family was in a rush. So you were rushing to establish relations with the Weiwu army. Sun Zhongyang turned and looked at the person. He calmly said, so what? The person said, have you ever thought that we too might be here to depend on the Weiwu army? Sun Zhongyang was speechless. Not only was the Sun family dumbfounded, even Lu Shu was speechless. The situation had suddenly changed. He was caught unprepared. He was puzzled. You came all the way here, covered in dust, just to depend on the Weiwu army? A slave from among the wealthy families suddenly knelt down. Great Lord, please accept us. We are willing to be at your service. The tense situation had suddenly taken a strange turn. A large group of people from the wealthy families in the palace had suddenly come to Lu Shu and wanted to rely on him. Even if this was real, Lu Shu still had to take them in. The wealthy families only sought benefits. How could Lu Shu believe them? They might only be doing so because they were forced to. After all, he had the power to kill them. In the future, they might take the opportunity to kill Lu Shu. Thus, Sun Zhongyang's greatest mistake was being with the wealthy families from the palace. They did not have any basis of trust, but he remained with them. He even pledged his loyalty while being surrounded. Under these circumstances, how could Lu Shu easily believe them? Lu Xiaoyu, Coral, Chen Zuan, and the others could immediately imagine what would happen to these people. They had even started to silently mourn for them. But what could Sun Zhongyang do? He was in despair too. According to his plan, the Sun family should have obtained the trust of the Weiwu army first. At this moment, someone from the Song family walked out. He took out a letter and said in a loud voice, Great Lord, the boss and the chief officer of the Song family gambling den, Xiao Mingze and Zhao Shuai, have ordered me to bring a letter to you. Li Haitan walked over and took the letter. Then, he passed it to Lu Shu. Lu Shu took a look. Was the Song family planning to pledge their loyalty? After all, Xiao Mingze had decided to send him several thousand sets of magical armor. Back then, no one saw Lu Shu in a good light. If Lu Shu was killed by Duanmu Huangqi, Xiao Mingze's investment would have gone to waste. The servant from the Song family did not mention their past contributions. He simply said, Xiao Mingze is very worried about you, Great Lord. Lu Shu smiled and kept the letter. I have to give Boss Xiao and Chief Officer Zhao some face. The people from the Song family heaved a sigh of relief. Just like what the rumors had claimed, Lu Shu was easier to deal with than Duanmu Huangqi. The other wealthy families looked blankly at the Song family. Now, they had the possibility of dying at any moment. Now, they realized that the Song family had already established ties with Lu Shu. At this moment, they regretted not making relations with the Weiwu army earlier. It was too late for them to say anything now. If Lu Shu went on a massacre, all of them would die, but the Song family would be fine. This was the difference between life and death. Someone suddenly said, Great Lord, the Li family is willing to provide the Weiwu army with resources. The family head has said that as long as you make a request, we will definitely do our best to fulfill it. Sun Zhongyang's heart broke. He was done for. The excuse he had thought of had been stolen by the others. This young man was very greedy. Sun Zhongyang felt sick. Why had he not specified his criteria, knowing that Lu Shu was a greedy person? He quickly added on. Great Lord, the Sun family can do the same. Great Lord, we can also. Great Lord. Lu Shu sighed with emotion. He was not good at making plans. Li Liang had said that as long as the deal-breaker had strength, they did not have to put much focus on wealth. It would naturally come to them. He was right. If Li Liang had not said so, he would be living his days while short on money. But the shouts of Great Lord suddenly brought Lu Shu back to the Azure Dragon village. In front of him was a massive introduction session. But the problem now was, how should he deal with these people? It was not quite suitable to bring them along, but neither was killing all of them. Chasing them away would be even worse, as this would sow the seeds of disaster. At this moment, Sun Zhongyang shouted, "Great Lord, the Sun family is the most sincere. We have been rushing at full speed to try and leave them behind. We wanted to meet you by ourselves." Lu Shu was dumbfounded. He was curious. Then why didn't you leave them behind? Sun Zhongyang was dumbfounded. This was a good question. Why did they not leave them behind? Lu Shu was more inclined to believe Sun Zhongyang. For some reason, he had a feeling that Sun Xuanwen had the courage to make such a bold gamble. Sun Zhongyang quickly pointed at the other wealthy families. "Great Lord, we rushed here as quickly as we could to meet you. But they followed so closely behind that we could not shake them off. If you don't believe me, ask them." Lu Shu looked at the rest. The other wealthy families said in unison, "Great Lord, there was no such thing." Sun Zhongyang was speechless. The other wealthy families secretly laughed. Who were you fighting against? Now, you would go through life and death with the other wealthy families. Chapter 1259, Back Thrust. Sun Zhongyang had experienced the third emotional roller coaster today. The first time when he had failed to enter the rear mountain of the sword hut. The second time was when he encountered Lu Shu. The third time was when he encountered Lu Shu. He was slightly upset. The situation that his father had created was destroyed by him. Compared to the representatives from the other wealthy families in the palace, Sun Zhongyang was too inexperienced. Although he occupied a powerful position within the Sun family, did this mean that he was experienced? Not necessarily. The wealthy families all clamored to Lu Shu and wanted to provide donations. Suddenly, Sun Zhongyang was lost. What should he do? Evidently, the Sun family had the most courage. Even Xiao Mingze had only secretly made a decision for the Song family. At that moment, Lu Shu happily shoved the wads of cash and the gifts from the wealthy families into the seal of lands. Among these gifts were rare weapons. Lu Shu knew that the wealthy families were simply paying lip service. If they had not been surrounded, they would have presented these gifts to Duanmu Huangqi. But Lu Shu did not care. No matter what, he was only secure if he obtained material goods from these people. Chen Zuan softly said by the side, "Are you so happy collecting money?" Lu Shu looked at Chen Zuan. He said with a sense of justice, "Do you think that I am doing this for myself? The wealth in this world is just a disguised burden. Do you think that I'm really happy?" Chen Zuan was dumbfounded. He did not expect that he had misunderstood Lu Shu. When Chen Zuan thought about how Lu Shu had risked his life many times and taken up many responsibilities for the heavenly network, he started to tear up. "Brother Shu, are you not happy?" Lu Shu paused for 2 seconds. Then, he said, "No, I am happier than you think." Chen Zuan was dumbstruck. From Chen Zuan's distress, plus 666. When the wealthy families saw this, they were hopeful. The rumors were not wrong. This young man was really very greedy. At this moment, Sun Zhongyang thought about it. When had the rumor that Lu Shu was very greedy spread in the palace? Was it not when he had deliberately spread information about Lu Shu after being cheated by him? Back then, Lu Shu even acted as a rank 2 and was cheated by Sun Zhongyang. Now, Sun Zhongyang suddenly felt as if fate had come one full circle. After the transactions were completed, everyone suddenly realized that Lu Shu seemed to be in deep thought. Lu Shu had a problem. There was no suitable way to deal with these people. Since they had given him money, he could not kill them. But would Lu Shu be at a loss during times like this? Evidently not. He immediately thought of a solution. Lu Shu had met many humans in the Yellowstone National Park remains. They had even built a city within the remains. They might be able to provide their old king of gods with distress points every day. To be honest, if Lu Shu was able to channel all the distress points towards himself, he did not need to keep attacking cities. But they had different celestial maps. The gap between the two worlds also disrupted the flow of distress points. Furthermore, the relic in Yellowstone National Park was filth removal. Filth removal was still upset with him. He had no way to reopen the remains. But now, was he able to create a similar environment? Lu Shu would definitely not lock up the wealthy families forever. At least, he would not do so to the Sun family and the Song family. But Lu Shu could use their earlier developments and buildings. An environment suitable for human life in the 5th level of Nebula could be replicated in the 4th level of Nebula. After attacking the cities, Lu Shu felt that he might be able to create the 2nd Yellowstone National Park remains. Earlier, Lu Shu had not killed the inhabitants of the cities. After all, he would be killing too many people. Thus, after the Imperial Dragon soldiers destroyed the cities, they stopped. This also reduced the production of distress points. If Lu Shu wanted to break free of the Master Realm and reach a higher level, he would have a long way to go. When Lu Shu thought about this, he was excited. Then, Sun Zhongyang and the rest saw that there was something wrong with Lu Shu's gaze. After 10 minutes, over 1,000 people from the wealthy families were gathered by Li Haitan and the rest. They were made to line up in front of Lu Shu. When Lu Shu touched them, they disappeared. The elites from the palace panicked. What in the world was happening? In order to save some trouble and prevent people from rebelling, he even brought Sun Zhongyang back several times. In the end, it was confirmed that once they disappeared, they would not die. They would simply go to another world. Of course, what he thought was easy quickly grew difficult. The Song family and the Sun family were very cooperative, but it was normal for the others to rebel. But Lu Shu was also very patient. Lu Shu would ask these people to establish a common understanding with Li Haitan, Zhang Weiyu, and the rest. Then, he would put them in the celestial map. Furthermore, Lu Shu even provided them with a large amount of goods and materials. For example, he dried up a river and pulled out plants from dozens of kilometers away. He sowed many different seeds. Others played city-building games on their computer or phone, but Lu Shu had created a world. Overnight, the spies from the palace suddenly realized that the Weiwu army seemed to have disappeared. When they traced their tracks, they discovered a dried-up river and a barren wasteland. All the plants had been uprooted. The spies were perplexed. What in the world was the Weiwu army doing? Did they pull up trees at night for fun? Was this what they meant when they said that the Weiwu army did not even let weeds off? Overnight, the representatives from the wealthy families disappeared, along with the entire Weiwu army. They could not find traces of the Weiwu army. Everyone panicked. Where had the Weiwu army gone? The spies suddenly realized that something was wrong. Why did the footsteps of the Weiwu army seem to be heading back? There was nothing there, only a destroyed city. At the same time, in the nearest city, the city leader reorganized his military power. He had a gloomy expression on his face. While he planned on surrounding the Weiwu army, he organized the reinforcement of the city wall. His servant softly asked, "My lord, are we outflanking them from behind? Are you afraid that we cannot defeat them?" The city leader looked at him coldly. "Do you not trust His Majesty, the Lord of Heaven? Do you think that the magnificent West Lord of Heaven cannot defeat the Weiwu army?" His servant thought about it. Then, he said, "I can't say for the Lord of Heaven. The Lord of Heaven might be strong, but we cannot defeat them." The city leader thought about it for a long time, but could not find any points of contention. But at that moment, he saw that the "Escape Poverty and Make a Fortune" flag was flying in the moonlight. Damn, why are they back? The city leader panicked. Why can't the Weiwu army just go to the West capital? Why are they back? Chapter 1260, Be Direct. Lu Shu felt that he was extremely brilliant. He did not kill anyone initially because he wanted to speed up the progress with attacking the city. If he killed everyone beforehand, he would have one less source of income of distress points. When Duanmu Huangqi attacked Earth, he had brought along many soldiers from the Black Feather Army garrisoned across his territory. Although Lujian Pass had insufficient manpower, the other fortresses had more than enough. Lu Shu did not kill all of them because he felt that they were not worth his time and effort. However, things were different now. Since he wanted to open up a new world, it was worth making the trip back to gather those soldiers even if there were only a few hundred of them left. The city leader and his subordinates did not expect Lu Shu to view them as his personal assets. There were no threats to their lives, but nobody knew when they could exit. To Lu Shu, these people were his enemies, and if given the chance he assumed they would fight to their deaths. Moreover, Lu Shu thought about how he might come across 2 rivers and countless plants on his way back. The spies followed behind the Wei Wu army. They had already figured out the secret to successfully follow the Wei Wu army, and that was to stay 30 kilometers away from them. For some reason, any spy who crossed this distance would disappear mysteriously. These spies never suspected the mice hidden around them were on patrol. That was because all the armies they knew of had a powerful team of scouts. The spies thought that the scouts of the Wei Wu army were powerful and mysterious. They followed them the entire way, and without exception, among all the fortresses that the Wei Wu army passed by, the villagers were not disturbed, but all of the soldiers who guarded the city disappeared. They disappeared without a trace. That was because Lu Shu became more cunning. He told Lu Xiaoyu to drag the guards down into the ground, and he then placed them into the celestial map. None of the people in the outside world knew what had happened to them. This made others fear him even more. Some people said that the Wei Wu army was like a beast who ate soldiers. Any intelligent person would know that this rumor was ridiculous. However, there were many stupid people who believed in it anyway. Meanwhile, Lu Shu hoped that there were more of these stupid people. That was because he was the one who told Zhang Weiyu to spread the rumor. Initially, Lu Shu wanted Lu Yizhao to do it but gave up eventually. Lu Yizhao was too handsome, and when he sat in the restaurant and spoke formally, he was very convincing. That was his unique advantage. If he was not part of the Imperial Dragon soldiers, Lu Yizhao would not need to worry about living a good life. However, he chose to be a scout for Lu Shu. In the past, Zhang Weiyu said that Lu Yizhao might be the person who was most likely to advance to the Master Realm. However, the Imperial Dragon soldiers recently realized that Lu Yizhao had a very pure mindset, and was extremely happy with his lot in life. When he was out scouting, he often walked around in a daze. He would even sometimes run around barefoot with his hair down. Li Haitan said that when he called Lu Yizhao back to eat dinner a few days ago, Lu Yizhao was sitting on the cliff and looking into the sky. His white shirt made him look like a handsome deity. Of course, that was why Lu Shu completely left Lu Yizhao alone. He thought that it would be excellent if Lu Yizhao could find happiness like that. Therefore, Lu Shu did not ask Lu Yizhao to spread the news and tried to invoke fear of him. Fear was the most important source of income of Lu Shu's distress points. Another source would be the slaves in the celestial map. Now, in the star of the fourth nebula where it was the best suited for living, humans lived in settlements. Lu Shu intentionally placed the wealthy families in different sectors, and the slaves were placed separately too. As the star was huge, they were unable to meet up. However, to Lu Shu's surprise, these groups of people were rather hardworking. In the past, Lu Shu had to plant the plants he threw into the celestial map. Now, he could just throw them in front of the people. The few rivers which Lu Shu uprooted from the universe gradually formed its own water system in the star. However, Lu Shu was not satisfied as the living creatures had yet to form a real civilization. Every day, a large amount of distress points were produced for Lu Shu. Although the amount was gradually decreasing, Lu Shu continued to put people into the map. As the days passed by, the Imperial Dragon soldiers who had almost reached the West region capital, once again found themselves outside Lujian Pass. The soldiers of the wealthy families were on their way to the West region. However, at this moment, they received the news that the Weiwu army had returned. Everyone was confused after hearing the news. Were they still planning to fight? These people were not allies, and every wealthy family had their own commander. There were over 10 commanders amongst an army with hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Moreover, the suspicion they had against each other was very strong. As the situation was unclear, nobody dared to do anything rash. After all, everyone had followed the imperial edict and reached the West region, so they decided to act according to the situation. What exactly is the Weiwu army doing? The commander of the Sun family was Sun Xuanwen's seventh brother, and he had been waiting quite some time for Sun Zhongyang to report back. However, Sun Zhongyang suddenly disappeared. Several hundreds of thousands of soldiers from the army were getting into formation 100 miles away from the northern borders of the West region. They looked as though they were assisting the West region, but they were actually planning to sit this one out and reap the spoils later. However, the only problem was whether Lu Shu would come back. At this moment, Lu Shu had already brought the Imperial Dragon soldiers back to the Lujian Pass. If not for Zhang Weiyu, who was sure that nobody was alive under the rubble, Lu Shu might have asked them to dig through the rubble too. Lu Shu suddenly froze. That was because a special name quickly went past his screen of distress points. However, the name was too special and caused Lu Shu to refer to the income records immediately to ensure that he did not see wrongly. Indeed, he did not see wrongly. From Duanmu Huangqi's distress, plus 666. Duanmu Huangqi had not supplied distress points to Lu Shu in a while. It seemed that Duanmu Huangqi had suffered from the fact that the Imperial Dragon soldiers had yet to attack the capital in the West region. Could he be any clearer?
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens.